So, back in 1960, slinky inventor Richard James left his wife and their 6 children to join a cult down in Bolivia. His wife Betty ended up taking over, and honestly, she turned the failing company completely around. And then, in 2001, Betty was inducted into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame. There's this term called the royal we, sometimes also called the majestic plural. It's when someone holding a high position, usually religious, refers to themselves as we instead of I, and, well, it was popularized by Queen Victoria. MLB National League, which started in 1876, actually predates the Football League of England from 1888, and is the oldest professional sports league that's still in existence. A lawyer tried to settle a civil suit by invoking his right to trial by combat in New York. And, yeah, this happened in 2015. Mark Twain traveled extensively and once said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth." In 1916, German agents blew up a munitions depot in New Jersey. The explosion was so large that it could be compared to a 5.5 Richter scale earthquake. $100,000 in damage was done to the Statue of Liberty, and people as far away as Maryland were woken up by what they thought was an earthquake. Noise pollution is deadly to whales. Sonar can directly inflict fatal physical trauma and decompression sickness, which is kind of like the bends. Individuals, and sometimes even entire pods, will beach themselves to escape, whereupon they will choke to death under their own weight or drown at high tide. So there's actually a zoo in Japan where they've made these tiny holes in the otter enclosure, and it lets people visiting the zoo shake hands with the otters. Pretty adorable, right? Surgeons, may actually wire the jaws of severely obese patients shut as a treatment for weight loss. It sounds a bit extreme, but it has been used as a medical option. The bird on the Twitter logo is actually named Larry the Bird, and he's named after Larry Bird, the famous NBA player from the Boston Celtics. Kind of a cool little fact, isn't it? Morbidly obese people who are just too big for MRI machines at hospitals are actually sent to SeaWorld, where they use machines designed for zoo animals to image them. It's kind of surprising, but that's how they manage it. The Speaker of the House during the Watergate scandal could have, stalled the Vice President's confirmation and impeached Nixon, which would have made himself President of the United States. But he decided that as a Democrat, he had no right to a presidency that the American people had entrusted by election to a Republican. The official Maryland anthem actually celebrates a pro-Confederacy riot, calls for Maryland to secede, refers to Lincoln as a tyrant, and even calls the USA Northern scum. It's honestly a pretty controversial song. Iran has, honestly, one of the largest rates of brain drain in the world. It's estimated that somewhere between 150,000 and 180,000 specialists leave the country every year, which, wow, ends up costing the country at least $50 billion in human capital annually. The SARS, or Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome virus, is so infectious that, believe it or not, one man in Hong Kong ended up infecting 183 people in 8 apartment buildings with just one horrific bowel movement. This caused a plume of aerosolized feces to circulate through the ventilation system and even outside on the wind. The only green over red stoplight in the world is actually in Syracuse, New York, and that's because some persistent local Irish kids just didn't want the red, which stood for Britain, to be above the green, representing Ireland. Back in the 1910s and 20s, a young man who dressed really fashionably to attract women, but, didn't have much else going for him, was called a jelly bean. Venice Island was actually built on a foundation of tree trunks. And, interestingly, about 1,200 years later, those same trunks are still supporting almost all of central Venice. When you're ignored by the person whose attention means the most to you, well, the reaction in your brain is actually similar to that of physical pain. Harley-Davidson motorcycles, believe it or not, have a failure rate that's over twice that of the top 3 motorcycle manufacturers in the world.